Hi, I'm Eddy Van Calster, and today I'm happy to be with you because I'm introducing the Froton Life Tool. And the Froton Life Tool is a tool that I created to help people to get closer to themselves. So in fact, the Froton Life Tool that you see here is you. It's you, it's me, it's everyone. Humankind is symbolized in this tool. And this tool has 4 sides. The first side is the levels of consciousness. And you see on this side there are 7 layers. The second side is the illusions and their capacity of existence. Then you have the side of the resonances. And then you have the side of the body. This is the most easy to understand, the most obvious, but it's important to realize that the body is working in a certain logic that is the same logic as the levels of consciousness. I had a background as a dentist in the first place. Then I studied different kind of complementary medical approaches. One of them was electroacupuncture. And with this I realized that during the measurement of the body energy, I had a big influence by talking to the person. And this was cleaning up the influence of what we call now psychosomatology, the link between body and mind.
Staring at the stars, waiting for a sign.
And people around me said that I really should do something with it because it seemed to be a kind of miraculous downloading from information. And that's how it was created. Now, what is it? What is the Froton Life Tool? Well, the Froton Life Tool is you and me. It's every human being. It's the human being symbolized in all its facets on a tool. And why does it work so well? Because as representing you, it's an ideal mirror for all your misconceptions, the thoughts that make you suffer. Because essentially the Froton Life Tool is meant to bring you into connection with a higher level of consciousness. Now, these 4 sides are interrelated. So the purpose is, for example, to see if there is a relationship between an illness, an organ, and the other sides of the Froton Life Tool, like your level of consciousness or some illusions.
It's important to realize that the body works in a certain way that I will explain later, and it works in a way that is the same as your consciousness works. There are also 7 layers, and there is also this mechanism of mastering from the higher into the lower. So resonances is like a manifestation of the levels of consciousness, because this side, levels of consciousness, is only possible to be lived by resonances. If I give you an example, you have here on the level of consciousness, you have the level of the relations. Well, this is on the 4th level, only possible if you have some friends, for example. The friends being the manifestation
of the level of consciousness.
And that's the first step to realize in what way they work together. Because we are not only a body, of course, we are much more. And that's to discover in this Froton Life Tool. There is a direct connection between you and the outer world. And the Froton Life Tool makes you realize this more and more, so that the personal, the idea of who you are gets less important and the connection gets more important. And that's why on the Froton Life Tool there are on each side circles in the middle of each level that symbolize the fact that you are in balance on each level, and if you are in balance at each level, you can be connected to all levels of consciousness and even can be connected to what we call the 0 point or emptiness, what is the highest level of connection with universal everything.
On each side you can see that there are circles in the middle. Well, the circles are representing a balance. It's the ideal situation on every level of consciousness. On each side and on each level there is a goal, if you want, and that is to bring the most ideal situation. The most ideal situation can be the situation of a body, of course, of an organ, or to have a good health, but it can also be, for example, the ideal situation of getting rid of some illusions. Because illusions, they are somewhat real, but in fact they are only real because you make them real. They're totally dependent on your beliefs. And so if you can manage as much as you can on each side and on each level to be in balance, then your life will become more easier and more peaceful.
But in daily life, of course, we all know that we have problems, we have conflicts, we have thoughts, we have doubts. And this all makes that we cannot always be in the center. It's very human not always to be in the center. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, the purpose here with the Froton Life Tool is to be conscious of it. And so you can do something about it. And these tensions are represented by these stones.
So on the side of illusions, on the 6th level, you can see the word believe. And if you believe too much what you are told and you get stuck in it, you don't relativate, then you get stuck in the stone. The conditioning is like getting hooked. And when you have this hook conditioning, it will have an effect on every other level of consciousness that is below. And that's why you see here a green arrow. It means that as soon as there is deviation here, there will be automatically a deviation on all other levels. And so the effect of deviating on one level is much more important if there is deviation on the higher level than when there is a deviation on the lower level. And it is also like this for the body. You have this hormonal system that is mastered from high to low.
The stones are symbolic for the deviation of conditionings, of false beliefs. Normally, if people tell you something and you realize quite fast that it's maybe not so right, you don't get stuck in this conviction. But if people repeat and repeat and repeat, and like usually it is when you're educated by school or parents, whatever, then you start to believe it so much that you get stuck in this idea. One of the most popular ideas is that you are the body. It seems so obvious, but it's not true. You are not only the body. And so when you get stuck, you get like crystallized in this conditioning, And that's why it is symbolized by the stones. And you can get crystallized far from the middle or very, very close to the middle. It depends in how much tensions there is because of this conditioning, this crystallizing, this getting so much hooked that it becomes very solid. And then it's a bit more difficult to dissolve. And so one of these consequences of getting stuck in the lower level is that you go into a swing on that level. And that's why there is the red arrow to show you that you cannot get in connection with higher levels of consciousness if you stay in a swing on lower level of consciousness. For example, if you take the second level, the level of the emotions, if you are very sad about, for example, a person in your relationship, and it's difficult to handle because sadness is hurting, then you try to escape from sadness and you get angry. You get anger, which is another emotion. And so you swing from anger to sadness, and sometimes you will cry and sometimes you will hit the one, maybe hit the one that you're angry at.
So here you see the red arrow, and the red arrow is teaching you that if you are stuck on a lower level of consciousness, it's very difficult to get connected to the higher levels by just staying in this conflict, we would say, in these tensions that are symbolized by the stones. So you first have to get in balance here before you can get connected, and not try to work only on this level intentions, going from one idea to another, or replacing one conditioning by another conditioning.
So that is a swing, and these swings we often stay there for a while, for a long while, sometimes for a long time, sometimes even during whole lifetime. Sometimes, if you believe in reincarnation, maybe sometimes in different reincarnations they can stay, because you compensate. You have one conditioning that is not nice to feel, and you want to get rid of it, and you fill it in by another conditioning. So you stay on the level of consciousness where you're stuck. So we have these 7 layers of consciousness, but these 7 layers, they are also interrelated. It means that they influence each other. It's kind of human principle that is linked to the universal principle, that is that everything influences everything. You have this in the body also. Every part of your body influences every other part of your body. Well, in the universe it's the same. We are not really fragmented, we are not isolated. The reality is that everything is linked to everything. We are one with everything around us.
There is a direct connection between the levels that are closest to each other. For example, when you take the 4th level, then it is much more influenced by the 3rd level than, for example, by the 1st level. So the closer they are to each other, the more influenced they are. Now, it's important to know what are the influences, because, like I already told, the higher is mastering the lower, but what is becoming from the lower towards the higher, when in fact the lower is a sabotage. It's in terms of habit, in terms of unconscious, like we say often, the lower is sabotaging the higher. If you have, for example, a deviation on the 2nd level of consciousness, let's say if you have too much pain, then it will bring you far from the middle, and it will bring you in tensions on the second level. Then these tensions will sabotage the third level. What does it mean is that when you have a problem, an acute problem on the third level, and you want to correct it here, it will be impossible to do, because the pain on the second will sabotage the correction on the third. And that's why when we go step by step in a kind of healing, and a kind of gaining insight about the problem, we have to follow 3 steps. And the first step is to understand where your problem is. Let's say, for example, in the third, like we said. The second step is to correct the saboteur on the second level. And then, if this is done, then you are in balance, or more in balance, on both levels. And that's what will allow you to go to the third step, what is the solution. And the solution is always higher, because, like we said, the higher regulates the lower. So we need first to calm down in the lower levels, and then we can connect and find a real solution on the higher levels without being too much influenced when we go back into materialization in daily life.
For it to be clear, for the work to be clear, you need to focus just on one item. The first step being, what is really my problem? Try to define it, and for this there is a help on the Froton Life Tool, because there are words and sentences that are put on these different levels, and you can recognize as a mirror I would say the energy of the vibration or the information of the word that is brought to you. So there is kind of resonance with this word, and so by this way you can more easily define your problem. The second step is to find your saboteur. Now, what is a saboteur? The saboteur is an idea, a misconception, that is so normal to you that you would not even have any doubt about his truthfulness. But of course, it is not true. So you need someone to tell you, or you need a mirror like this, because the saboteur, you will never find it yourself. And the saboteur on the Froton Life Tool is always just beneath the level of the problem. So this helps you to find your saboteur. The second step is a little bit more difficult, because it's a kind of unconscious habit, and it's so much programmed, so much conditioned, that to leave it, to let it go, is quite of a challenge. But it's really needed on the lower levels of consciousness to bring balance before we go to the third step. The third step being the solution. And as I explained before, because the higher levels of consciousness are mastering the lower, the solution always comes from above. The solution always comes from higher levels of consciousness, because it brings much more insight, much more clarity. It's like when a bird flies high, it sees much better what is going on. In the beginning, when it was created, I thought, okay, this can be used by everyone. I will write some instructions. I wrote a book that is called The Miracle Is Yours. And with this book, the people can, by buying the Froton Life Tool and the book, work on themselves. It was a very good idea and it worked for some people, but usually people need some guidance. And the reality is that people ask me to explain, to guide them, to go with them in this processing, and of course then it goes much faster. And yes, with the energy that we bring together, mirroring towards each other, well, this is a really wonderful happening each time. So we talked already about a lower level being able to sabotage a higher level, but it's not always like this. If there is no conditioning that is hooked, so if there is not on the lower level a conditioning that is crystallized so much that it is disturbing, then we could say that there is an open mind without these stones being so solid. Then there is movement possible. If there is movement, then the life is seen more clearly and there can be a useful information to the higher. And that's what we call feedback. It means that the information on the lower level can be sent to correct something on the higher level. And this something can be, of course, another conditioning on the higher level. This is feedback. So in daily life also you do something, something that is wrong. Of course we know everything that is wrong is just interpretation of something wrong. But then you have a kind of feedback from life, from other people usually, that will tell you, well, just change because I cannot live with this. The same with nature. We do something to nature and nature is showing us, like for example through a virus or through climate changes, that we should do differently. That's feedback. And so in these interactions we can open to ourselves because we see clear. Most of the conflicts at all levels in society are there because we don't really see clear. If we would see how we work inwardly, we would understand the others, how they work inwardly, we would be much more tolerant, we would understand each other much more, and everything would calm down in peace. That's to discover with joy. Great fun. See you later.